This is a series of webinars we've been doing on the topic COP26 and the Brahmaputra. Two very important aspects that deserve attention. One is the sustainability concerns that we all as mankind face today. And the second aspect is the river Brahmaputra, which has a very, very unique characteristics. And I think people who have not studied Brahmaputra or who are not aware of Brahmaputra cannot appreciate what these unique characteristics are about. So we thought it is very important to bring experts and strategists from all the different domains as much as possible to talk about it and generate the understanding and the body of work. It is not just the series of webinars that we are doing, we are also taking forward various studies, and slowly you will see a lot of it reflecting on our website. We are also requesting senior researchers to do specific studies and submit a detailed paper to us about their findings on specific issues, and also continuing with various conversations with diverse set of experts. And in different ways, we will try and put this in our website so that people can benefit out of this. This is the fifth of the series of webinars that we have been doing. And we've got some very, very diverse set of leaders in this domain, thought leaders in this domain, experts in this domain, and also policymakers who have been working for many decades to drive this very, very important issue. So today is again a very important set of panelists that we have. The chairman of Central Water Commission, a very, very important organization which has got a huge contribution for many decades. And also we have former chairman Pandya sir. Sir has been right now he is the Secretary General of International Commission for Irrigation and Drainage, a person with a huge experience and a lot of contribution. And then we also have representation. Chairman IWI is not able to join, but he has deputed a very, very senior member, technical, Ashutosh Gautamji, who will be representing him. Then we are also happy to have our friends from France, chairman of Bridge Tank. They have a huge contribution to various strategic issues, and they have a focus area of Bay of Bengal. So I thought it's very important to have representation, and who better than Mr. Joel himself to be part of it. And we are also looking to work together on various issues. Thank you, Joel, for joining us.
Thank you for
We
the
have
invitation.
also senior functionaries from different global banks, because they have been also driving development. And it is not just about helping financially, but I'm aware they do a lot of due diligence and a lot of studies before such contracts are supported by them. So we have Pritam Banerjee from Asian Development Bank, and we also have Akshita Sharma from the French Development Bank, AFD. So we have a very good panel today, and I'm very excited to be part of this. And I would like to first invite Ashwini Pandya, sir. Sir has been the former chairman of CWC as well, and an alumnus of Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, with his MTech in structural engineering. He has over 40 years of professional experience in water resources and irrigation planning, design, implementation, and financing. He has a sound knowledge of various aspects of irrigation, drainage, engineering, with a strong competence of leveraging technologies in core areas, specifically information technology. An avid proponent of irrigation and hydropower project, he has been a key figure behind the establishment of the international flagship event India Water Week for the Ministry of Water Resources, which is presently in its 5th edition, and also established the National Conference on Dam Safety. Sir has been recently been adjudged, given an award, international award, and he's the first Indian who will be a recipient of this. Sir, I would like you to also mention about this award, because this is extremely prestigious for India as well to be honored in a manner like this. So, sir, over to you, and the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Das. Dr. Gupta, the chairman of Central Water Commission, and other friends from the international financial institutions and IWAI and various other organizations. It gives me great pleasure to be with you in this second webinar, especially on Brahmaputra. We had one earlier webinar, and at that time we had made detailed presentations which were quite well received, because we tried to cover the hydrological aspects and the issues of Brahmaputra, especially from the water management point of view. I hope my sound is okay. I mean, otherwise I can. Okay. So let us talk about Brahmaputra. Today, I don't have any additional presentation to make, because whatever I had to say, I have already given it in my previous presentation. So today we'll talk on more general but basic issues that we need to handle. Brahmaputra is a very important river as far as the South Asia is concerned. Currently, it is the single largest source of water, fresh water, for the eastern parts of the country, and very likely it will be a source which will be also required for the rest of the peninsular Indian subcontinent. So Brahmaputra has played a very important role in the thinking process for the future planning of water management across the country. The river is also a geological wonder, because it originates on the rain shadow side of Himalayas, after the great peaks of Himalayas on the other side, runs parallel to Himalayas, as against most of the other rivers which are actually cutting across Himalayas. You take most of the rivers that are originating from Himalayas, they are basically trying to cut across the Himalayan range and then come down towards the Indian plains or other countries' plains, like say Myanmar or even China. In this case, it is running parallel, and then it takes a very huge bend. And after the bend, the characteristic of the river completely changes. The river, which was largely snow-fed and a perennial river, becomes a very highly monsoon-fed river. And with the high amount of rainfall that occurs towards the Indian side of the Himalayan divide, creates a river which is so wide that at times it looks like sea. You are not able to see the other bank when you stand on one of the banks of the river. And then the floods are legendary. The amount of flooding that happens is enormous. Apart from that, the Brahmaputra also has got a very, very peculiar characteristic, that once it enters the plains, it becomes an alluvial river and a very braided river. Because of the braided morphology, it poses a lot of challenges, because the courses keep on changing, the channel geometries keep on changing all the time, and they also create the issues of land erosion, and they also create the issues of managing and maintaining various structures across the river. So these are the primary issues that are there. Simultaneously, the other major issue with the river is its international character. Essentially, three countries participate in the course of the river. The upstream part, which originates in Tibet, is largely handled by the Chinese government. Then it comes to India, and then it flows into Bangladesh. So all the three countries have a stake over it. There is another tributary, major tributary of Brahmaputra, that is Barak. which actually also originates in India. And then it crosses over to Bangladesh and joins Brahmaputra in Bangladesh. Apart from that, the tributaries like Sankosh, Manas, and various other North Bengal tributaries, which are also originating in Bhutan, and then they travel to India, and then later on travel to Bangladesh for a very short stretch, and then they join the Brahmaputra. And that extends all the way up to Tista. All these rivers are very high yielding. And when we look at the Brahmaputra yield as a basin, we'll end up finding about 580 billion cubic meters on an average in a year, which is the largest in the entire country. And this much amount of yield occurs over a very small geographical area, which is the prime reason for having this kind of severe floods that we are having from Brahmaputra. So the Brahmaputra has got a very peculiar hydrological characteristics. Also, from the topographical point of view and also from the environmental point of view, the river passes through a number of such pristine areas which are hitherto untouched by the development, and simultaneously they also have certain unique characteristics in terms of flora and fauna, and also the geology, being a very dynamic geology of the Himalayan region. So these aspects make the development of this river quite challenging. So how to go about the development aspects with relation to this kind of multitude of challenges is a very important topic that needs to be addressed. As we all know, the overall water resources scenario in the rest of the country is not too good. There are very strong tensions leading to very severe kind of dialogues and very extensive kind of litigations amongst the states because of the water. And they are also facing a lot of challenge in order to provide adequate water to their population. Most of the sources in the peninsular India are already committed. There are firm plans of development, so there are firm demands which will have to be satisfied. And those demands are such that those demands cannot be met purely out of the local water. Now, when you take the other major basin, which is Ganga, it also has got a similar kind of a yield. But then the consumption pattern within the Ganga basin is also equally large. The population footprint is also equally large. More than 53% of the population stays in Ganga basin and is directly dependent upon the Ganga basin waters. Whereas if you look at the Brahmaputra basin, then with a similar yield, hardly something like say 10% of the Indian population is basically staying in the areas which are directly covered by the river basin. And then that is why the availability of water in that area makes an opportunity for providing the excess water to the other parts of the country, so that their difficulties can also be handled. So looking at these aspects, it is very important that when we look at the future of India in terms of water management, we should look at the Brahmaputra River in its totality and in its context to the country. Of late, this thinking has been gaining ground, but then in the earlier periods, the thinking was that it was to be treated in isolation. So the focus was largely on the flood management. And because of the issues of logistics, because of the issues of remoteness, the solid flood management developments were also not taken up in the manner that they should have been taken up. Now there are some moves about it. We are already having Lower Subansiri nearing completion. We will also need Middle Subansiri in the basin. Dibang project is also coming up in the state of Arunachal, which is also going to be one of the major storage project. And key storage projects on this river are the ones which will go a long way in providing many of the solutions to the problems of flooding as well as to the problems of the water management and water support to the rest of the country. So country as a whole needs to really look at this and work out that in what manner the plans can be implemented. And for implementing those plans, how do we proceed on a strategy which is going to be of creating minimum harm and generating maximum benefits and spreading those benefits across the population. Characteristically, the financial conditions of our northeastern states are not really so good. They have certain constraints from the environmental points of view. They also have certain constraints from the logistical points of view. And being in a specific kind of an environment, their development also gets stymied because of these kind of constraints. And for that, this river is providing a huge amount of source of revenue as well as source of logistics. At a time, if we develop the basin properly, we can very easily generate hydropower to the tune of almost 50,000 megawatts. And the revenues being generated out of a environmentally sound and completely green source of energy can go a long way in uplifting the entire region in a very, very large sort of way. Even though we have seen that relatively a smaller river like Satluj and the basin development has provided the kind of yields, financial yields to a smaller state like Himachal Pradesh. The magnitude of those benefits being there at Brahmaputra basin have not yet been recognized, have not yet been pursued to the extent that we need to pursue. So from these angles, I feel that we need to really look at this river in a very comprehensive sort of way, and we need to look at the river not as a source of misery, which it has been so far, that most of the time we will only hear about Brahmaputra during the floods. But we should look at this river as a life giver, not only to the region, but to the entire country as a whole for ensuring its water security. So I'm very happy that we have Dr. R.K. Gupta, and we have also got Mr. Gautam from IWAI, who are going to be very key members of the entire developmental effort on part of the water resources in the country, and probably they will be able to provide us with a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight into the issues that they are going to tackle in future. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and let us hope that we get a very good deliberations today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was absolutely comprehensive in terms of your coverage and giving us a good start. I mean, of course, your more than 40 years of work behind speaks when you speak at this forum. And as you rightly mentioned, in isolation, we'll do more harm when we are looking ahead in terms of our strategic vision, in terms of managing such a unique river. I'll make a small presentation about the underwater domain awareness framework that we are working, and how it impacts our entire management of the Brahmaputra River. So we at the MRC have been progressing the underwater domain awareness framework because I feel there is a huge opportunity now, and probably many of the concerns or the challenges that we face can be very effectively managed if we are able to progress the underwater domain awareness framework. So I'll quickly talk about these few aspects. Now, most importantly, the 21st century global order most of the interactions have now, or the geostrategic developments have now shifted to the tropical waters. We must understand what this tropical littoral condition means. I mean, both politically and economically, and wherever there is politics and economics, the military will have to take part and be part of the whole interactions. So it is very important that we look at it in a very, very holistic sense. And most importantly, the physical difference. When I say physical difference, a very specific example is anything I mean, when we say underwater domain awareness, or we want to bring transparency in the what is happening below the surface, acoustic survey is the only means for which we use sonars. Now, in terms of the technology, the development of sonars happened during the Cold War period in the temperate and the polar waters. And the sonar performance that was achieved because of these technical developments in those waters does not apply to our waters in the tropical region. And the degradation of performance is of the order of almost 70%. And this is a very big concern, irrespective of what your application is, unless we are able to build acoustic capacity or make these sonars work and give you the desired results. I don't think we will be, irrespective of whatever it is, whether it is water resource management or navigability for inland water transport, anywhere you need to see below the water, uh, this will be a very major challenge. Now, coming to the Brahmaputra, you can see there are so many countries that are part of the whole Brahmaputra river and the basin. I mean, the country like Bhutan is not part of the river, but it is part of the river basin. And you can see the influence. So there are transboundary issues, geopolitical issues, geostrategic issues also what we need to look at whenever we look at any strategic formulation. Now, any development has to account for people, economy, and nature. I mean, the communities play a very, very important role. So, socio-economic, socio-cultural aspects deserve enough attention. Economy, of course, I mean, unless you have the right kind of resources, we have people from big banks who support big developmental projects. So, but money doesn't flow if the conducive environment is not available or not created. So economic growth will have its own challenges and back-end issues. So having better understanding or better transparency makes it easier for everybody to participate effectively or wholeheartedly. And of course, sustainability will have to be given enough importance. So nature plays a very important role. Otherwise, in the so-called development, we may do more harm to our future generation. Now, river dolphins, I think I must mention this very, very clearly. And sometimes people get misplaced. I mean, river dolphins are a very unique creature. They are blind. They use sound, or we call it acoustic vision, to perceive the environment around them the way we humans or most of the terrestrial animals use sight. So these creatures, dolphins, use acoustic vision. So the increasing activities is only going to create more harm. So when we do conservation, we have to be mindful of all the different aspects. And when we talk about environmental impact assessment, we have to make sure that we look at all aspects. And one can see there has been a lot of conservation efforts, but the numbers of these dolphins have only been going down. So there are issues that require, and again, there underwater domain awareness plays a very, very important part. Now, Pandya sir has talked about water resource management. If you look at this map, the distribution of water availability is a very big concern when we look at India, and just not just India. I think the entire Indian Ocean region, or the Indian subcontinent, or whatever scale, spatial scale that we want to deal with. So right now, probably the Brahmaputra basin is in a very, very comfortable situation, but if we do not do what is required to be done, I mean, I belong to Assam, so I can tell you, when there is flooding, there is sorrow, and during the dry season, now we are facing increasing drought-like conditions. So I think this requires a lot of attention, and in today's age, with so much resources being available, I think this is not a very good state to be in. So already there's a lot of work done, and I think a lot more. I mean, as Pandya sir also said, that many disciplines, many domains need to get involved to find a comprehensive solution. I mean, there is domestic politics involved, there is geopolitics involved, there is a whole lot of other issues involved which need to be looked at. So if we try to do in isolation, in spite of the best effort, I think we will not achieve what we want to achieve. Next is the water quality management. Today, the worry is that these two aspects are being looked at by two different probably ministries also. But you see, on one end, there is shortage of water, but we also see high quality water being flushed through the drains. So how do we do a comprehensive or calibrated water quality management, which will have a very, very far-reaching impact even in our water resource management? And we can see, I mean, there are so many places in the country where the chemical and the biological contamination is at a very, very alarming level. So we need to evolve systems in place where we can manage this in a very, very comprehensive. And today, with the digital world or the digital framework that is available, I think a lot more can be done, and even we can predict whatever activities. And when we look at environment impact assessment, there is a lot of modeling and simulation means that are available, which can actually predict, and we can actually change the practices or the behavior in a manner that we have much less sustainability concerns going forward. Even various other activities should use far more technology to make sure that we really do not get stuck at a point where things become irreversible. Now, there is a term called maritime domain awareness, which generally covers the larger governance mechanism. I mean, better domain awareness will provide you better governance mechanism. But globally, what is seen is the maritime domain awareness term remained an event-driven formulation. I mean, when I say event-driven, it was after the 9/11 incident that the global community woke up to this and they started driving this in a very, very aggressive manner. And similarly, in our region, it was the 26/11 incident. But the worry is that this remained a security-driven thing. So the participation by the other stakeholders remained very, very kind of limited. And also what we see is that underwater domain awareness, or being aware below what is happening below the water, did not receive enough attention. And the kind of work that we are trying to look at is also address the concerns in the freshwater systems. So, I mean, just to give you a sense of the stakeholders: security, blue economy, environmental regulators, and disaster management, and science and technology, they all can come together, pool in resources, and synergize their efforts to build something which can help everybody. I mean, just to give you a sense of maritime security concerns, I mean, we've had incidents in the past. I'll not dwell too much on the security aspect, but you can easily see that we have internal security aspects also, and particularly with relation to Brahmaputra, that region has its own challenges. The second is blue economy. I mean, you can see a whole lot of kind of wealth that is available, and unless they contribute to the GDP, I don't think we'll be able to have resources even for the research component of it. So how do we leverage? And when I said the tropical concerns, I mean, even the import of technology and import of know-how is not helping us in many ways. I mean, we are trying to get a lot of support from the West, but they only have a canned solution which does not work for us. So unless we push ourselves and put indigenous initiatives in place, I don't think we'll achieve the results that we desire. I mean, just to give you some examples of the river system, I mean, sediment management is a very, very important issue. But I think today what we see, dredging has become unviable. I mean, even the project, the kind of resources that it demands, it makes the larger project unviable. So there are many better ways of doing sediment management. And if we can do a better study in terms of underwater domain awareness or sediment transport, I think even the dredging can be minimized or can be made much more cost effective. I'll not go into the details of that, but even the Northeast has a lot of other resources that are oil and gas is a huge availability there. But how do we leverage a sustainable development vision is very, very important. Now, there is a lot of push on the sustainability development goals, but are our practices compliant to some of these global expectations? In terms of disaster and environment, again, I mean, the underwater noise is a very, very important issue. Inland water transport is a very ambitious project and has to be supported because it is connected to the larger developmental requirements that the country has. But with a better awareness, we can navigate development even with a far more sustainability compliant way forward. I mean, a lot of strandings are being seen, and even the dolphins, as I said, they use acoustic vision. So, what happens to their well-being or their numbers? I mean, that's a big concern, and a lot of people have been talking about it. But a comprehensive underwater domain awareness can really give the solutions that we look forward to. So just to give you a sense of what all aspects are there, I mean, the Northeast is also very seismic prone. So can we put, I mean, it will be too much for me to say that we can prevent a natural disaster, but with certain infrastructure in place for early warning, I think we can minimize the loss of life and property. And when such big investments are being done, can we not look at certain early warning systems? And sediment management, I have repeatedly said, is a very, very important aspect that deserves attention. Even the navigability of the inland water transport is a very, very important issue. How do we ensure that we achieve a better understanding of the siltation pattern, and in a real time, we can actually manage that? And obviously, science and technology, understanding the ecosystem that exists, how the different components of the ecosystem interact with each other is a very important area where we can navigate sustainability only with such kind of deeper understanding. And when we say underwater domain awareness, can we put so many sensors underwater? How do we build smart systems where the existing infrastructure should be able to give us a much better picture of the underwater domain? I have been part of certain technology developments, and I think there is a lot of solutions that are available which can be far more cost effective and give us what we desire. Now, this is the framework that we have been pushing. If you look at it, all the four stakeholders, today I see a lot of fragmentation among the stakeholders. I mean, many of them are doing a lot of fantastic work, but the lack of synergy, I think, is a very, very big limitation. So if you look at the four faces of the cube, all the four stakeholders that we've been talking about have their unique requirement. But unless we focus and put in a lot of indigenous effort in acoustic capacity and capability building, we will not be, and I don't think every stakeholder, even I can tell you the security establishment cannot put so much resources to build the acoustic capacity building that is required. So all of us need to come together and contribute to the requirement. And I mean, I would say the entire region, I mean, the Indian Ocean region has the similar problem, or today we talk about Indo-Pacific. The entire Indo-Pacific is defined in the tropical waters of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So India, under the Sagar vision, can even play a leadership role in this entire, and when we even do technology transfer or we seek support from the West, we should be aware that unless we have the capacity to absorb the technology, we will never be able to even use this technology that we get from the West. So there's a lot of internal capacity building that is required. And then only we'll be able to kind of take it forward. And if you look at it, India or this entire region, I mean, the BIMSTEC countries collectively have 1/4 of the global population. So 25% of the global population resides in this region. But if we are not able to create enough opportunities for the young generation, I think we are also, otherwise also heading for trouble. So this framework also addresses some of those issues. So if you look at the smaller cubes, multidisciplinary people can come together, get themselves skilled and contribute and do good for themselves. So these smaller cubes represent the various projects that one can take up. And even among organizations, you will see a lot of organizations doing overlapping work, or even for the government to drive where to put the money also can be determined by this. So you can actually color some of the cubes saying that this has already been done. You look for some other, I mean, even for the researchers, when we define what is required for nation building or for the region building, we can use this in a very, very comprehensive manner. This is getting some traction at the government also. I mean, Niti Aayog has been very kind. They had given us a project to submit an interim report, and now that report is now being sent to various stakeholders for their comments, and then we'll probably get into the next stage of actual policy formulation. The same thing I have divided into smaller aspects like underwater radiated noise. The same requirement is even for the military, that their acoustic stealth depends on the sound they radiate. But even for acoustic habitat degradation, I mean, now the platform that you're putting on the water, even whether it is International Maritime Organization is also pushing, and thankfully the government of India sent our paper to the IMO last year. But even in the freshwater systems, as I talked about dolphins, these platforms or the ships that are coming in, they must have certain standards in terms of the noise that they generate. So that is very important. And even the ship designers and ship builders must have certain notion of underwater noise, which some of them are not. And it is not just about the noise. It will also bring efficiency in their operations. I mean, the platforms will be far more cost effective in multiple ways. Even the fatigue failure is a result of poor noise management. Uh, and the next important thing is the sediment management. I mean, whether it is for inland water transport, navigability, or the port management or water resource, more than 50% of our dams are silted, and no desiltation can be done unless we understand what the sediment quality is or what the sediment type is. And again, acoustic becomes very, very important. I mean, sediment management itself is a subject in itself, so I will not go into the details, but the sediment disposal is a major issue. So if we can do a proper acoustic survey, the entire management can be done far more effectively. We have some work in this. Today, there's not much of time, but we can look at it separately. So again, acoustic capacity building becomes, I mean, in many of these cases, we import technology from outside, which doesn't give us the results that we desire. They, of course, cannot understand our unique characteristics. So that is where the outputs are not as per our desired requirement. Now, this is the framework that we have been proposing, a user academia industry partnership. If you look at India, there are already schemes by the government, but just that, they need to be plugged in appropriately. I mean, there is already Make in India, Skill India, Startup India, Digital India, massive projects, massive programs being driven by the government of India. And UDA just needs a few core understanding, and if we can plug this into these larger schemes, we can get effective policy and technology intervention along with capacity and capability building. And you can see all the stakeholders that are required or that are relevant on the sides of this. So this is one of the things. I mean, we are preparing these different technology tools which can use technology or the state of the art technology to give you a easy governance tool. I mean, sitting a top management official in his office should get all the inputs so that they have a real-time assessment of what is happening on the ground. This is a similar system based on the AIS system that is available at sea, but a similar system is being developed by the IWAI on which is called the River Information System. So the same thing can be used for various aspects, even for navigability. If it is overlaid with the electronic charts, even for better navigability, we can use it, and even for a policy intervention. And a similar thing can be used for even water resource management. So a lot of data can be used, and even for the communities, riverine communities, we can use such similar thing for enhanced fishing and shrimp farming and whole lot of things, a lot of underwater. We have developed something for the seaweed farming, but similar things can be also done for water quality management, technology-driven tool which can give us these kind of real-time spatio-temporal map. So, I mean, specifically UDA for the river system, sediment management, navigability, water resource management, water quality management, environment impact assessment, and acoustic habitat degradation assessment. So I think the riverine communities also have a major stake, and that will, I think, kind of calm down the tempers that we see sometimes, because sometimes development is not able to take everybody together, and there are differences among communities. So a good governance system will bring a lot of peace and harmony across, which will be very important in the long term. So I think I'll skip these. I mean, digital ocean, I think, is very well understood. I mean, this is a very senior lot of people. So we have been doing a lot of sensitization programs. The UDA Summer School we've been doing since 2017. People from all across the country, even the resource person are the senior most people that are available in the domain. You can see, and they are not only each one of them does a project, but they also get exposed to various entities that are there, various opportunities that are there. And even this is a peer learning format where young professionals from the stakeholders, like even Coast Guard officers, naval officers, shipyard officers, DRDO scientists have participated in a 6 weeks residential program with the young students and faculty. So you can see many of the senior people coming and joining us. I mean, the Honorable Chief Minister of Goa, former naval chief, and a whole lot of senior people are there. And then we also do field experimental studies. Like we did this 5-day workshop at Khadakwasla for water resource management. And I think our people must get a first-hand field experimental exposure. I mean, young students, and even so we hired different equipments that were deployed, data collection and done, real-time data analysis was demonstrated. And this was also part of a PhD work by one of our students. So you can see various things. 5-day we did data collection in Khadakwasla, and very, very different type of results were received. And I think it also upset a lot of conventional kind of belief or this kind of thought process people had. So you can see this. What I request is we should have an outreach, engage, sustain methodology. Outreach is to sensitize a lot of people. Engage is to engage with the young India or the young lot, and also with the senior stakeholders and policymakers, so that we can connect the career opportunity for the youngsters. And sustain is coming up with certain policy projects or technology projects where the intervention can be done in a much more well-informed manner. And we propose setting up a center of excellence. We've already started work on 1 or 2 aspects where it's a 5 different aspects are covered: research, incubation, skilling, academic centers, and a policy center. So that's all from my side. And we have from the chairman CWC, as chairman IWI could not join us today, but we have a very important person. Ashutosh Gautamji is here. He is the member technical and deputy project director at Jal Marg Vikas project, and he's a BTech and an MTech from IIT Delhi with gold and silver medal respectively, and engineering service selected officer. He did not join by choice and holds an LLB, so a significantly qualified person, and a 1-year infrastructure management program from the ISB Hyderabad, which was sponsored by the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. He has also served as the state head, chief general manager, and regional officer at the NHAI for the states of West Bengal and Gujarat. He has been in various positions, and I think sir has a very diverse experience, and I think the most important person to speak on the IWAI, and we are very happy to hear you, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Das. In fact, I am basically a man of roads, and I have recently joined the water sector on deputation. But since the concepts are almost same as far as project management is concerned, and the administration of large infrastructure projects, as you have requested me, though I was a bit busy during the presentations given by many eminent speakers over here. So I would like to say good afternoon to everyone. And though I was not very, you can say, very alert in listening their contents, because tomorrow there is a Sagar Mala Apex committee meeting for which we were basically finalizing our presentation to be given tomorrow at Vigyan Bhavan. So, as requested by you, though I am not very well prepared about the Brahmaputra, am I audible properly to everyone?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yes,
So,
yes.
I think, as you have rightly said, that a lot of potential is there in the Brahmaputra, and I was listening Pandya sir also about the overall riverine potential, the inland water transport potential in the river Brahmaputra in NW2. We all know that the NW2, we have the national waterway with a length of around 900 kilometers from Dhubri to Sadia. And in northeastern region, we have around 20 national waterways declared, out of which 16 are in Assam, if I am not mistaken, and 4 or 5 national waterways which are very important in Assam and operational now, as like in NW2 Brahmaputra, Dhansari, NW31, and Kopli River and Barak River. And in addition to that, other rivers, other national waterways, Gumti River in Tripura and other national waterways. So, but main is NW2 Brahmaputra, and we have existing installations in Brahmaputra at Dhubri, which is a terminal, multimodal terminal. And we have also another multimodal terminal at Pandu, Guwahati. And we are also developing multimodal terminal at Jogi-Ghopa, which is adjoining the MMLP, being developed by the NHIDCL and NHAI. In addition to that, we have developed so many other interventions for cross movements at Nimati, Majuli, and many other places as tourist jetties on National Waterway 2. We have the functional office at Dibrugarh also. And we are likely to plan a multimodal terminal at Bogibeel, which will basically capture the after the construction of the Bogibeel Bridge, the cargo which is coming from Arunachal Pradesh, agriculture products, and the tea and other things which are nearby Dibrugarh area. And you are aware that Dibrugarh used to be one of the most prominent place before the partition. And when the Bangladesh was also in the Indian region, and a lot of water transport was available at that time through Bangladesh, actually in India. But after the partition, these issues later developed, and we have only chicken neck connection for northeastern region. And gradually the cargo movement from Dibrugarh and northeastern region reaching up to Calcutta, Haldia, and eastern coast up to Dhamra. Dhamra is a new port, but Paradeep and other eastern side ports, it was getting difficult. But currently, with the comparison of the road transport cost and rail transport cost, and with the environmental issues and the advantages associated with the inland water transport, now we have earmarked Brahmaputra as a important key intervention to be developed further. And fortunately, we have our Union Minister, Honorable Sarbanand Sonowal, from that area only, and who has given very insightful instructions based on his personal experience as a Chief Minister Assam, how to develop Brahmaputra in a most efficient and effective way, so that it can be further utilized by the community and the people of the northeastern region. we are very much very eager to develop the Brahmaputra under the guidance of the Honorable Minister, and we have a lot of interventions to be completed as early as possible. And we are finding much more potential in the Brahmaputra River as far as inland water transport interventions are concerned in comparison to the NW1 Ganga River. And because in Ganga River the draft issue is not that much critical. Not in Brahmaputra the draft issue is not that much critical in comparison to the river Ganga, and the quantity of water and some issues related to current speed. The velocity of water is much more in Brahmaputra. Average speed. Some of the flooding seasons may be equal. So with this, I can, if anything else which I can add, we are also basically we are developing the fairway by keeping the longitudinal dredging and transverse dredging at important cross places like Nimati, Majuli. We are maintaining the navigational aids also, day channel marking and night navigational aids for the movement of transport. We are also planning to connect Haldia to Dibrugarh as well as Guwahati. And recently we have taken a pilot pilot movement from Patna to Guwahati with a FCI cargo. So with these, we are also developing Gumti River at Sonamura so that we can connect it with Bangladesh at different places. And we have certain agreements with Bangladesh for movement as well as some of the shipment space in the Sitwe port as well as Mangla port. So those are basically, all these issues are basically helping the connectivity of Brahmaputra River with Ganga. And once it is connected through Bangladesh, then the whole inland water transport potential can be harnessed. And as we are developing the 2047 vision for inland water transport, and I would like to, in fact, we have kept it in the tomorrow's presentation, and we are likely to increase the number of operational waterways from current 23 to 50 by 2047. And the cargo tonnage, which currently we are handling as 108 million metric ton, will cross 500 million metric ton by 2047. And before that, at an intermediate stage, we have developed some targets for 2030. So accordingly, we are finding Brahmaputra as one of the most potential waterway as far as in India is concerned. And once Brahmaputra is connected to Ganga, then other countries, Nepal, Bhutan, and other landlocked countries which are dependent on India will also get connected waterway connections and reaching up to the nearby ports. So with this, I take this permission to complete my discussion over here, though it is unprepared, and if I have left something, I can be contacted on mail and I will provide the required information. With this, thank you, Dr. Das, and I may kindly be permitted to leave.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I do agree. Chairman IWI was supposed to join, but you had to last minute cover for him. But I think you made some very important points, and we appreciate you joining us under the constraints that you have been working on. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, our next speaker is Dr. Preetham Banerjee. He's a logistics specialist consultant at the Asian Development Bank. Preetham da has been somebody, I know him for a while now, and a thorough professional. He brings several years of experience in the area of logistics, operation, trade, facilitation, and trade policy. He's currently a consultant with the ADB as a logistics sector specialist. he has been very, very closely involved with the Gati Shakti initiative of the Honorable Prime Minister. And he has a PhD from a very reputed university in the US, and somebody who's been very, very deeply involved with various issues related to even the development of the river. So, Pritam da, your turn, please.
Thank you. So, in this very eminent panel, I'm perhaps a little bit of an odd man out, especially given the topic of today. But I will try and bring in some perspective from the logistics point of view and how it relates to the the UDA framework, especially in the context of the Brahmaputra River. There will be 3 points of entry I will be discussing. One, specifically as from the Prime Minister's Gati Shakti perspective, what the Brahmaputra means to India overall and to this region in terms of connectivity. Some of that has already been in detail described by Mr. Gautam, but I shall try and add some more context to it. Second, I will try to focus more on the regional integration perspective through waterways, which is very critical. And last but not the least, try to focus on the operational aspects of achieving these objectives of connectivity and regional integration with reference to the UDA framework and what that means largely. So to start with, what the Prime Minister's Gati Shakti program is trying to do is three major things. One is, of course, to improve the overall planning of transport infrastructure in a much more coordinated fashion. What that means very specifically is that we have different modes of transport which are planned in silos uh, and often not in consideration with each other's needs, which has led to high transaction costs and operational costs. Idea is to then plan these infrastructure pipelines in a manner that they encourage multimodality and they lead to optimal use of different modes. As most of you would be aware, the different types of goods require different types of solutions. Bulk typically should be carried by rail or by water and not by road. But in India, we have a situation because of poor planning where significant distances are covered carrying bulk material on from using trucks and using roads. So that's just one example. But to find solutions which lead to optimal use of modes and therefore reduction in cost. Obviously, a big part of that solution would be coastal shipping and also the use of inland waterways. What also the Prime Minister's Gati Shakti program is trying to do is to reduce the carbon footprint of logistics movement, not just the cost, but also the carbon footprint and create more sustainable means of transportation. And again, coastal and inland waterways come in a big way in those solutions. Last but not the least, there is what is called as redundancy planning and having this ability to absorb shocks to your supply chain, which means if you are over dependent for critical raw materials and other commodities and their transportation on a few specific modes of transport, that makes you very, very vulnerable. So, for example, a very good example is the over dependence on the chicken's neck network of roads and rail for connectivity to the northeast, and overall on dependence on, let's say, certain rail routes for the movement of particular bulk commodities. So in that context as well, inland water and coastal shipping overall become a very important solution. So that's what the Prime Minister's Gati Shakti master plan is trying to achieve, and therefore the importance of Brahmaputra becomes critical. And let me explain now on the second point I was trying to make, and this is connected to the whole regionalism framework. So what Mr. Gautam was discussing very succinctly and very nicely was the NW2, and then he was also mentioning that certain pilot movements have happened, especially for Food Corporation of India, for movement of food grains from the northern part of the country to the northeast. Now, if if you visualize the map, how the pilot has happened is that you have had food grains moving from north, from across Bihar, south into West Bengal, down the Hooghly, into the coastal waters, and then again upriver. into what is called the Padma River, and then Padma then connects you to Brahmaputra and NW2. So it's a very circuitous route that we have to take. So a major initiative that is not discussed is not discussed today, but is something that is being thought about in strategic terms, is the connection between NW1 and NW2. And this also relates to an extent to this holistic vision that was being mentioned by Mr. Pandya. Because these two waterways have been historically connected to each other, not through a circuitous route, but through a far more direct route. So if you imagine the map, and those of you are familiar with geography, the original course of the Ganga actually goes straight to the Padma. The Hooghly is a tributary which comes further south to Kolkata, Haldia. And this was a operational, waterway, of course, for much smaller riverine boats, historically speaking. So essentially, there was a direct link between northern India and Brahmaputra. Now, this link can still be revived. In fact, in the India-Bangladesh so-called protocol routes that we have, these are routes which have been agreed bilaterally between these two countries, that both countries will accept as legitimate routes for the inland water movement. There is something called the route number 5 and 6. There's a place close to Farakka, which is on the Bihar-West Bengal border, called Dhulian, on the old Ganga channel. And there's a point where the old Ganga channel, which still has water in it, on during lean seasons, the water is not much. It's in stretches, it's a trickle of water really, but the river exists, and during monsoon, it's in full spate. So this river, from the point I'm talking about called Dhulian, there's another point called Aricha, which is in Bangladesh, where it meets the old Padma. And the Padma north of Aricha is fully navigable. It's part of the existing operational protocol route. If this route is operationalized, it will save close to 700 kilometers of distance, which is a lot. Which means you actually have a fully operational route which connects you from what is Varanasi to Guwahati through Bangladesh. And which is a very viable route, and it will create, once if it is operationalized, and it can be, technically speaking, it's challenging but not impossible. And if this is done, it will create a viable network which does three very important things. It provides, of course, an operational waterway with much lesser distance to cover, and therefore commercially much feasible between India's northeast and so-called mainland India. I don't like using this word mainland India. I think northeast is as much a part of our mainland as, but for lack of a better term, it'll provide a direct linkage. Second, it will create commercial viability because it will allow Bangladesh, Dhaka, to have much more direct linkage with North India. They also won't have to come south and up again. You can have a direct linkage between Dhaka and North India and rest of the country. Most importantly, in the terms of building this kind of resilience, building alternative infrastructures, it will create an alternative for the chicken's neck further south for movement of heavy bulk movement in times of need. When you have crisis, let's say either due to natural disasters or other reasons, uh, when that some of the infrastructure might be compromised due to war or other reasons. For all of that, you're building a resiliency into the system. So that is, I think, a very important objective in terms of the whole connectivity program. And I hope that, several studies are being conducted. I'm not at liberty to discuss the details of that, to how this route can be operationalized. Now that we come to the last point on the UDA framework, and this I think is related not just to this, protocol route 6 I was discussing in terms of direct connectivity between the Northeast and connecting NW2 and NW1, but it refers overall. Oh, but before I get into that, I'd also like to mention the Borak Valley route that was being discussed, which will provide a direct linkage into this NW1, NW2 from the eastern side, from the from the what is called the Barak Valley, the Silchar area. So if you look at the map of the Northeast, and Dr. Das and many others are here from the region, so they will bear me out on this. The Northeast has basically two large economic and population clusters. One is the Brahmaputra Valley itself, of which Guwahati can roughly be said to be the center. And the other one is the Borak Valley with Silchar as the center, and the Borak Valley and the adjoining states around it, which means Tripura, Manipur, Mizoram. So that southern cone of the northeast, if one can call it that. So even that, through the Borak Valley inland water linkage, you are connecting it to this network. You're basically reconnecting the dots of the historical waterway system that existed for a millennia before various reasons brought it to a stop. So to come back, if you are going to create this extensive riverine network, which will connect our north central and northeastern parts of the country and bring Bangladesh into the picture as well. Uh, there are certain challenges that, and there are experts here who know much more about this than I do. So I will pardon any, errors please do pardon any errors on my part. From my understanding of having worked in this field, there are three very critical areas that need focus. One is the challenges of largely monsoon-fed rivers in terms of maintaining navigability, maintaining channel, the hydrography, understanding of the hydrography in detail, and what is called river training. So all of this is not an easy task, and the challenge that we are facing, I think, is that the so-called global expertise in this area largely comes from Europe, mostly from Germany and Holland. The rivers in those parts of the world are not similar to ours. So while the experts are of nobody is doubting their credibility and skills, I think their familiarity with our conditions is to an extent bookish. So the solutions that they are suggesting, that I personally feel, and again I stand to be corrected by much more informed people, I have found them to a certain extent bookish. So to that extent, developing our own abilities in this area is a critical point. And there UDA has a lot of role to play in being able to, provide through sensors and other means years worth of data, perhaps. If we start now putting in the physical infrastructure for capturing such data using the broader UDA framework, only then we should be able to use predictive tools with that data and provide the answers that we need. Predict perhaps how channels will move due to certain criterion, things like that. So that's one critical area. The second one, I think, is on the whole water resource management and dredging aspect, which is related to the first point I made. The biggest cost in maintaining operational capability of any inland water system is related to dredging, because you have to maintain a certain minimum draft, etc. This is a huge cost in our rivers. Now, to that extent, and I'm glad that Mr. Gautam is back because he will also, endorse this. So now, this huge cost of, maintaining navigability through dredging, uh, one, of course, is the question of who will bear this cost. Can this be passed on over the long term to the operators, and what impact it has on the commercial feasibility of these rivers? I think those are larger questions of policy which will have to be addressed. In Europe, the costs were gradually managed, maintained, and finally passed on over a period of decades to allow operational feasibility to happen, commercially speaking. But the bigger question is, do we have the best technologies and the best means to do the dredging that we are doing? And to that extent, I think, as Commander Das very urgently pointed out in his presentation, so there's a huge role for UDA framework and the various tools it presents to provide these solutions. So I'll just like to end by saying three very important things. One, and I'm glad again Mr. Gautam is here, and others, that the Ministry of Port Shipping and Waterways, for example, has two very critical centers of excellence. One in IIT Chennai, looking at the broader aspect of maritime navigability, inland water and coastal. But they have also an inland water institute in Nini, called Nini in Patna. Of course, Patna Institute is more focused on the operational aspects, but I think integrating the UDA framework and starting a process of this journey where, this information, the awareness is inculcated with the faculties to start with in these institutes, and then perhaps modules to help students to do better, and then perhaps even look at technology incubation, startup, etc. I know IIT Guwahati has an excellent center. And I have been working closely in this field, and I think Mr. Gautam will correct me if I am wrong, but all of these institutes work in silos today. Therefore, knowledge, information, exchange of ideas is not happening. And perhaps, Commander Das and others like him and his institute can play a very important role in bringing these people together and then have and inculcate knowledge exchange. I think that's one point. Lastly, I think what is very important is that if some program can be started in partnership with Commander Das and Institute in either in IITs or wherever, where concentrated thinking over the next 1 or 2 years can be done in terms of developing a program for river management, navigation, etc., which is unique to our rivers, to see what is being offered by the West, by the European experts, and then map what is missing, given our hydrography, our geography, given our conditions. And if that can be done, I think it will be a seminal contribution, and I hope this is taken up. I would like to thank Commander Das for giving me a platform to share my ideas. Again, if there's anything that I have said that is incomplete or half-baked, I am responsible for it, and I hope you will, hold that excuse my lack of knowledge. But thank you again for allowing me to interact with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pritamda. I think you have touched upon the very, very important issues in a very, very comprehensive and insightful manner, because you have a deeper understanding, and I think you have illustrated it in a very, very effective manner. Thank you so much. And it I think makes a lot of difference, because whatever be the reason, a project has to succeed. So that is very important, and we need to be upfront to accept where the gaps are, and so that we can take it forward. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Next, I would like to invite from the French Development Bank, Ms. Akshita Sharma. She is an experienced project manager with demonstrated history of working in public policy and environment, skilled in analytical skills, environment, health and safety, biodiversity, presentation and patent law. She did her graduation and post-graduation from Punjab University, where she was also working as an assistant professor before joining Ministry of Earth Sciences, followed by her career in project management. Ma'am, the floor is yours, please.
Okay, so thank you so much and good evening, everyone. It has been a very interesting discussion so far, though I missed bits and pieces of that because my connection is not that good today. So regarding the discussion, we have touched multiple aspects related to this vivacious water body, the Brahmaputra. For me, as a biodiversity sector manager, habitat management and carbon mitigation remains the priority. To begin with, I would like to introduce you to the AFT and the interventions we've taken around Brahmaputra in Assam. So basically, for a land of 1.3 billion inhabitants in India and record economic performance, the country must now ensure its transition towards a sustainable mode of development, reconciling growth and respect for the environment. And AFT has been supporting sustainable urban development, energy transition, and ecological preservation in India since 2008. I got a chance to meet Dr. Das recently, and the kind of work he's doing is commendable, and it would be a pleasure for us to understand more regarding what are his future interventions going to be in relation to Brahmaputra. And as I talk about Brahmaputra, I need to talk about the remarkable natural wealth this country has, its flora and fauna. The country has two of the world's 8 most important biodiversity hotspots, the Western Ghats and the Eastern Himalayas. However, as we know, its heritage is threatened despite a strong legislative framework. The state of Assam has a proactive policy for sustainable and participatory management of its forests, rivers, combining exploitation and preservation. AFT is supporting this approach by financing the reforestation of damaged forest areas, promoting forest management involving local populations, and raising the awareness regarding protection of the river of Brahmaputra. We're also taking steps for raising awareness of the administrative staff and training them in terms of importance of preserving the national heritage, and for our interventions in Brahmaputra plain remains an important part. Talking about I now shift my discussion towards blue carbon, carbon mitigation, and Brahmaputra. Blue carbon is simply the term for carbon captured by the world's ocean and coastal ecosystem, but the same has to be applied to river bodies as well. You have probably heard about human activities emitting carbon dioxide and containing atmospheric carbon. You must have also heard that these gases are changing the world's environment, and obviously not in a good way. So, what we can do and how Brahmaputra, which is now becoming a threat to Assam, can actually play a very important role in sequestering this carbon. As we are aware, seagrasses, mangroves, salt marshes along the coast capture and hold carbon, acting as something we call as carbon sink. These river systems, though much smaller in size than the planet's forests, sequester this carbon at a much faster rate and can continue to do it for millions of years. Most of the carbon taken by these ecosystems is stored below ground where we can't see it, but it is still there. This carbon found in the riverbed soil is often thousands of years old. Blue carbon provides opportunities to mitigate climate change while increasing ecosystem services for the communities, including climate change adaptation. However, blue carbon ecosystems are vulnerable to climate change, leading to uncertainties in the future efficacy of these ecosystems. Under this, I would like to discuss and would like to emphasize on the potential impact of climate change on blue carbon. Despite uncertainties, carbon sequestration in Brahmaputra ecosystems will be enhanced by landward migration of blue carbon habitats, maintenance of sediment supply, restoration, and improved water quality. Mudflats, riverbeds, and coastal swamp forests could also contribute to climate change mitigation. Although for Brahmaputra, we have a large data gap. And obviously, this is something where we can have help from the Maritime Research Institute. The tropical forests that thrive in river water, which is definitely the case of the Brahmaputra plain and the Assam rainforest, forming a canopy with the atmosphere and the extensive roots in the sediments in the intertidal zone. The area that is above water and at a low underwater level, scientists refer to them as blue carbon ecosystem in contrast to the green carbon ecosystem, such as the forest and the grassland. So overall, I would like to convey that Brahmaputra has an immense potential for blue carbon. The problem with Brahmaputra transports heavy sediment load, about 800 million of tons during flood. Quite a good amount of this sediment gets deposited in riverbed, and as flood recedes and river water flows through multiple channels, for instance, 30-kilometer downstream of Guwahati. All this can be subsided if we follow the practices of plantations across the riverbeds, which would play a very important role in sequestration of carbon and would solve the serious problem of flooding, overtopping of embankments, and making it difficult for engineers to manage and control the Brahmaputra. So, as I conclude, the bigger picture of blue carbon in this context is that Brahmaputra habitat conservation and minimizing the loss of environmental degradation, we have a very simple solution. And that simple solution remains by increasing the forest cover across and along the banks of Brahmaputra with a smaller intervention, what we call as blue carbon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You definitely brought a very different dimension to our discussion today. And we really thank you for your comments. Thank you. Now, I would like to call upon Dr. R.K. Gupta, sir, who's chairman of Central Water Commission. I think we all know Central Water Commission has been playing a very important role for many decades, and the body of work that they have created across the country is enormous, and their publications are, I think, read by all researchers, or should be read by everybody, because that kind of depth of work and the amount of information that is available is unparalleled. Sir has been with the Central Water Commission of almost 36 years and he's got experience in water resource development and management, especially in the planning, design, and implementation of hydropower and water resources projects. He has also served as the chairman, Krishna River Management Board, looking after the issues related to water sharing and water conflict resolution. His expertise is in the field of hydraulic engineering, tunneling, and underground works and hydropower development. His areas of interest are hydraulic engineering, design of dams and hydropower projects, and dam safety aspects. Sir, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Das, first of all, for giving me the platform to share my views about the Brahmaputra River. I will be talking about the Brahmaputra River and giving an perspective from water resource engineering side. So I have a small presentation. So I will present that first. As we know, we have so many river basins in India. Main river basins are about 20. And Brahmaputra is one of the most important river basins in India. Next. Next. First of all, let us see the statistics, some features of Brahmaputra River. Its total length is around 3,000 kilometers, and in India it has about 30% of its length, and 33% is going to 33% of its catchment area is also in India. So about 1/3 of total river system is in India. And it is traveling as from Tibet to India and then to Bangladesh, but it has its catchment in Bhutan also. So in fact, in Bhutan, about 96% of its area is lies in the catchment of Brahmaputra River. Next. So this is the basin map of Brahmaputra River, as Dr. Das has also shown that. So this river originates near Mount Kailash. There is a glacier, Agassi Glacier, from where it starts, and it travels towards east in the Tibetan plateau for about 3,000 kilometers. And then it enters into Arunachal Pradesh, and where there is a great bend, we call it. So in Tibetan area, it is known as Yarleng Sangpu somewhere and somewhere Yarleng Zangpu. But when it enters into India, it is known as Siang. So in Arunachal Pradesh, it enters from Tibet area, where the nearest town is Tuting. So while traversing towards the south, it meets its tributaries Dibang and Lohit. These are two major tributaries which joins Siang River from the left side and near Dibrugarh. So from Dibrugarh onward, it is known as Brahmaputra. So Dibrugarh, now Brahmaputra traverses, comes into the plain, and it travels down towards the west and then enters Bangladesh near Dhubri. So Dhubri is the town where it enters into Bangladesh. During its travel in the Assam, it is joined by its tributaries, basically Subansari and Kameng, which joins Brahmaputra from the right side. So basically there are 4 or 5 major tributaries. One is Dibang and Lohit, then Subansari and Kameng. These are the main tributaries of Brahmaputra, which joins in India. Other rivers also are joining, which are very important, which are coming from Bhutan, like Manas River, Sankosh River, and other small rivers also. Next. If we talk about the basin potential, it has a vast potential. In terms of water availability, we have about 537 BCM of water, and we have identified storage of the tune of 50 BCM of water, but we have developed so far only 2.33 BCM. We have a vast, little bit, not vast, I will not say it's vast, but we have irrigation potential of 3.7 million hectare, and we have developed only 0.7. So there is a great potential for development of storage and development of irrigation potential in this area. If we look at the hydropower potential, this region has 60,000 megawatt of potential, and we have developed only 2% of it. So still so much has to be tapped in this region for the not only for the economic development of this area, but for the development of the entire nation. This water is very important for us, Brahmaputra water, for meeting the water security of the country. And we have national prospective plans to transfer this water to the southern region of the country, where we have a drought-like situation, where water stress situation is already there. But the Brahmaputra basin, especially in Assam, when it travels almost in plains, so there is a lot of problems related to siltation and erosion also. So there is a very high rate of siltation and erosion. And this is also a cause of recurring expenditure from the country. So this, and we have to invest a lot in this area for tackling these issues. Of course, Mr. Ashutosh has talked about the waterways, and but I will say about river tourism also. There is a lot of scope for river tourism in this area, which has to be developed. Next. If we look at the country's whole country's scenario, we have various basins, and if you look at Ganga and Brahmaputra basin, water availability is highest, and it is of the order of 500 BCM in these two basins, and other basins have very little water availability. And whatever the live storage we have created, and Ganga and Brahmaputra basins have the least live storage creation. And in fact, Brahmaputra basin has the least, only 2 BCM for now. So if you, this Brahmaputra basin has a potential, as I said earlier, that we have 550 BCM of water we can store. And this water can be utilized not only in that region, but it can be transferred to other regions of the country. Next. This is the basin-wise water availability, and it shows the function mark of water stress and scarcity indicator. Water stress condition occurs when we have water 1700 meter cube per year per capita, less than that. And water scarcity occurs when we have 1000 meter cube per year per capita, less than that. So if you look at this graph, almost all basins of India are water stressed, except Ganga and Brahmaputra, because they have a lot of water and per capita water availability is there. So if we have to meet the water scarcity situation in the country, so this water, whatever is available in Brahmaputra, we have to transfer this water to other parts of the country. So we have national prospective plans to transfer this water. We have some interlinking schemes. So this is very important. This will be very important for the country. If we go for we take immediate steps for transferring this water and utilize this potential, available potential of Brahmaputra. Next. This is a per capita water availability in India as a whole. And if you, right now, we have a per capita water availability of the tune of 1350 and meter cube per capita, which is less than 1700 cubic meter per annum. It means the entire country is water stressed. But if you look at different regions, as I presented earlier in the slides, Brahmaputra and Ganga basins are not water stressed. So overall, as an average, we are water stressed. But if we have to transfer this water, Ganga basin also and Brahmaputra basin also, to other parts to have a comfortable position. Next. This is again the catchment of the Brahmaputra river. And here, if you look at the rainfall scenario, in Tibetan region, our rainfall is very less. So it is of the order of 200 millimeter or 300 millimeter annual rainfall. But as soon as the Brahmaputra river enters in India from Arunachal Pradesh, So this region has very, very high rainfall. This year, the rainfall is of the tune of 3,000 millimeter to 4,000 millimeter annually. So there is a drastic difference in availability of water in Brahmaputra basin in different catchment areas. In Tibetan areas, rainfall is less and the river is mostly snow-fed. And in our part of the country, we have a lot of rainfall, and most of the rainfall, most of the water yield of the Brahmaputra is from rainfall pot. Next. If you look at the Brahmaputra only, Siang River, when it enters from China into India, when it enters, the annual yield is around 80 BCM. And out of 80 BCM, our non-monsoon from November to April, the yield of the river is around 19 BCM. Around 19% of that is the non-monsoon component. And if you go down a little bit where Lower Siang project is planned at Bodak, the annual yield increases to 120 and non-monsoon doesn't increase much. It increases by only 3 BCM or so. So the major contribution in our region is due to rainfall. 40 BCM is additional water we get through rainfall only. And as we know that we have from open sources, we know that China is planning to divert about 40 BCM water for its water security, and it wants to take water from this river to north, towards the north, to fulfill its requirement. So any diversion, if China takes this water from Brahmaputra, so it will reduce the water availability in this river, especially in the non-monsoon period. That will be greatly affected. Out of 18 or 20 BCM, whatever is available during non-monsoon period, almost 80 to 90% of it will go away. So that will be the situation, not conducive, not only for the and from environment point of view, but also from the water security point of view. The people living there, it will badly affect that. So we have a rainfall, lot of rainfall in this region, and so we have to think about the projects which can store water during the rainfall season, during monsoon season, and we can have this water for our non-monsoon period. We can utilize this water for non-monsoon period. Other challenges, if we look at Brahmaputra basin as a whole, are flood problems, recurring flood problems we have seen in Assam. And second, as I said, non-monsoon water security problem is the biggest problem if water is diverted from Brahmaputra in the Tibet region, so which will reduce the availability of water. Third problem is the erosion problem of Majoli Island. Majoli Island is the biggest riverine island of the world, and it has a lot of erosion problem. As other participants have stated, that river has a lot of high velocity. It has a erosion tendency. So siltation also is the issue. Erosion is causing affecting the Majoli Island, and we are doing a lot of river protection works every year. We are investing a lot in this. So this problem has to be addressed. And fourth is the navigability throughout the year. This will be the challenge if the river water is diverted, and in non-monsoon, when water is not available, then navigability will be affected. So other issues are also river morphological issues related to grading, rising of bed level due to siltation, and of course, as I said earlier, Brahmaputra water has to be transferred to other part of the country for water security. This is also a challenge for us. Next. If we look at the flood problem in Brahmaputra, as I said earlier, that in this region, rainfall is very high. Average rainfall is 3,000 millimeter to 4,000 millimeter, which is giving a very high yield of Brahmaputra, 537 BCM. And major source of flood is these tributaries, Siang, Dibang, Lohit, and Subansiri. So we have to take certain measures to control these floods. These floods can be controlled to some extent if we have a good amount of storage in these sub basins of main Brahmaputra, Siang, Dibang, and Lohit and Subansiri. And not only storages in these sub-basins, but we have to take other measures also, like construction of dikes, etc. Let me tell you that we are for central assistance being released every year in the flood-prone area, and it's a recurring expenditure nation has to face due to this flood problem. Then how to solve these problems? This problem can be solved if we construct projects on these rivers Siang, Dibang, Lohit, Subansiri, so that they can control the rise of levels in the plains, so that the flood area getting affected becomes less. So this is the only way to control the disasters of the floods. Next. This is the Google map on the right top corner of river Brahmaputra, and this is shows the catchment area on the left top at different locations, and it also shows giving the 100-year flood values. If you look at the flood value at Pandu, Guwahati, it is very high. 100-year flood, 61,000 cubic meter per second. It is the flood level, and this is 100-year flood, but mostly every year we are getting about 40 to 45,000 cubic meter of flood every year. So it's a very high value, and we all know that this flood is causing a lot of damages. It is displacing a lot of people temporarily, and it is affecting the lifestyle of the people there. So next. So we have carried out some studies that if we have some storages available in Subansiri, Dibang, Lohit, Siang, of the tune of, for example, in Subansiri, we need about 2 BCM, in Siang, 9 BCM, Lohit, 2 BCM around. Then we can control the flood in Assam, especially at Guwahati. And at Guwahati, flood level can be reduced by about 1.2 meter to 1.6 meter. And this is a huge reduction, and a lot of area due to flood can be saved, which is getting devastated every year. So these are the floods that these are the storages which we need, and already the planned storages are very small, but in Siang we need big storage, 9.2 BCM, and this storage in Siang is not only for controlling the flood at Guwahati, as I said earlier. We have to have this storage for water security of the Siang basin. Because in case the water is diverted from the Brahmaputra in the Tibet region to the north, then the water availability in the non-monsoon period will be diminished, and only this storage in Siang basin can save the river, can save the lifestyle of the people, and can provide the water security. So this Siang basin storage is the main requirement to save I will say the entire ecosystem. This is just showing that at the different flood values, we can have a reduction in water level at Guwahati. If this reduction in water level of Guwahati will be from 1.2 meter to 1.6 meter, as I said earlier. And this will save a lot of things, a lot of recurring expenditure, and we will have properties saved, land saved, and this will be a huge saving if we have that kind of storage which we have planned for in Brahmaputra basin. This is a Majoli Island. As we know, the erosion problem is there. This is the largest island in Brahmaputra basin and has great biodiversity. Erosion problem is causing a lot of problem due to high velocity, etc. Erosion protection works are being taken every time, from time to time, and almost going on since long in this region. If we have the right amount of storage in the Brahmaputra basin, then we can control the peak value of the floods and the erosion problem of this island also. So these storages are also solving other problems which we are facing in the Brahmaputra basin. Navigability issue already Mr. Ashwin has talked about the national waterway number 2. But if in case of diversion of Brahmaputra basin, Brahmaputra river, then in non-monsoon period, our water availability will be diminished to 10% or 20% of whatever is available today. And unless we have a good amount of storage in Siang basin. So this issue is there, and Siang basin storage issue is very important, very being considered in the government level, and we have to have this project and Siang basin storage project, so that for the security of not only water resources but for our entire resource system. Next. Another impact of flood is on Kaziranga wildlife. As we know that every year flood is affecting our Kaziranga National Park, and many animals are getting perished of this flood. So if we have these storages, the water level will reduce, and Kaziranga wildlife will also be saved. This is another advantage of having the storages in Siang basin. We have a lot of opportunities in Brahmaputra. As I said that we still have untapped 50,000 megawatt of hydropower, which can enrich this region like anything. Means if we develop this hydropower, not only this region will be benefited in terms of power supply, but it will get richly encashed. We can encash this supply of power to other part of the country. And other not only this storages project, but we have different kinds of ROR schemes, also run of the river schemes, also in different tributaries, which we can develop and which can provide hydropower generation, and which can contribute to flood moderation and water security. This is the interlinking plans, national perspective plan. We have interlinking schemes. Our main from Brahmaputra, if you look at the right side of the map, number 10 is Manas Sankosh Tista Ganga link. This is very important, where we transfer this water to Ganga and then down to Mahanadi basin, and then from Mahanadi to Krishna and up to Kaveri and Pennar. So this transfer of water from Brahmaputra down to south, so peninsular India, is very, very important for the water security of the peninsular India and to reduce the water stress situation there. So unless we do this link, unless we go ahead with these projects, water security cannot be addressed. Yes. Conclusion is that this Brahmaputra basin is having a very vast potential, not only in terms of water resource potential, but it has economic potential. Now it has a lot of employment generation potential. It has a lot of industrialization potential. I will say that I was astonished when I was in Andhra Pradesh for 2 years, and I was astonished to find that a lot of fishes from the Andhra Pradesh is being supplied to Arunachal Pradesh. So I was just wondering why not if we have these storage projects there, and if we have pisciculture, and if we do fisheries, then Arunachal Pradesh can be the hub of fisheries, pisciculture, and it can supply lot of fishes to everywhere. So this will be the good employment generation, can be the good employment generation program, and it can develop the prosperity in that region. So not only fisheries, but other employment generation activities can be developed if we utilize the water potential and hydropower potential available in this country, in this area. Thank you. I once again thank you, Dr. Das, for giving the opportunity to share my views, and I'm thankful to Dr. Pandya sir also and other participants also for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Getting a perspective from you is extremely important, and you made such an insightful and a lot of data you presented, and there are a lot of young researchers who have been listening to you, so it makes a lot of impact for them to look at what are the future opportunities of research. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
The last but not the least, my very good friend Joel Rouet, he's the president of Bridge Tank France. We have been interacting on some very important issues in the Bay of Bengal region. Dr. Joel is a French national and is the chairman of the Bridge Tank, an international think tank specializing in the emerging economies and new industries. The Bridge Tank, launched in 2015, has since 2016 been the youngest think tank member to the T20, the engagement group of the G20, with 100 odd leading think tanks in the world. Having postgraduate from competitive exam, École des Mines in Paris, with a master's degree in atomic energy and a PhD in economics, Dr. Joel was a fellow at the London School of Economics and the Political Sciences and Center for China in the World Economy, Tsinghua University. In 2017, he was a recipient of the Columbia University grant for advanced studies and joined the French National Center for Scientific Research, for which he serves as École Polytechnique. Before launching the Bridge Tank, Joel Rouet served as the director to the French Research Center in New Delhi. He knows India quite a bit. If I may say, he knows India better than me, probably. Many notes when we exchange, he always has something more to add than what I know. So thank you, Joel, for joining us. You have a very, very important summing up to do now. Thank you so much. And I would like to get your perspective on the COP26 aspect also, because you have been closely involved in those kind of deliberations as well. Thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Das. Thank you for the invitation. I hope the sound is clear and the connectivity is good. Is that fine? Sure. You've ashamed me in your too kind, overkind presentation. I don't know if I'm knowledgeable about India, but I must say, and you'll please excuse me, that Dr. Das, you're asking me to speak about the region I know the least. I've never had the chance to travel to the northeast of India. I've traveled all other places. I've traveled West Bengal, but not the northeast. Among the great and mighty rivers of India, the one I know the least is the Brahmaputra. So please consider myself as someone who's learned a lot, who gained a lot, and I share your words of when you congratulated the Dr. Gupta, R.K. Gupta, of what he said about to educate young researchers. I don't know if that qualifies me for being young, but as a researcher, I've been quite educated by his presentation and by all other presentations and tools also and methods that were discussed and potential projects and the potential for the region. So in my first kind of appreciation of what was said would lay on the potential, because actually this is a river which we hear about usually when we talk about floods, when we talk about problems, about issues, and many solutions and opportunities first, and solutions to enable those opportunities to come have been presented today. And I think it's one proof, of the workability of the concept of UDA. So first of all, I've been impressed with the opportunities. Second of all, you mentioned something, Dr. Das, in your early words. You mentioned about the Indo-Pacific. You mentioned about common, I would say, tropical circumstances, and then you mentioned about solutions coming from the south, the global south, or the south. You presented our think tank as north to south. We also south to south because we have a majority of our board members who come from the global south. I would want to anchor my second remark onto the south, and especially maybe not on the so-called Indo-Pacific. So leaving the Pacific aside and moving to the Indo-African connection, you know that the South Asia, generally speaking, and India in particular, is quite active in its cooperation, bilateral cooperation, and support to multilateral cooperation in Africa. Very recently, a month ago, we had the World Water Forum talking about many aspects of water, but of course, rivers and great rivers and international rivers crossing borders were very important. And the association, the African network of basin organizations, met in Dakar, in Africa, at the time of the World Water Forum. And the presentations I heard about the Brahmaputra struck me in terms of comparisons with what happens in Africa. In terms of great rivers, Africa doesn't lack great rivers and is at par with Southern America and with South India, of course, and Southeast Asia. I would suggest that each region, South Asia on the one hand and Africa on the other hand, some rivers where the projects have happened already, some where they're yet to happen, and there is a potential and an opportunity. So there's a trove of cross-learning, cross-pollination, but in two ways. Not just for those river basins which still have the potential but have not enacted the potential to learn from the rivers which have done some of interlinking, some of water storage, some of sustainable agriculture based on that, some of hydroelectricity and optimizing the hydroelectricity, the release of water with the navigability. Of course, those rivers which have had basins organizations which did that can share their knowledge towards those rivers where those projects remain to be done. But I would add the reverse, because we're entering into a phase, and that moves me gradually to your question on the COP26. We're moving into a phase when it's not just about civil engineering, water engineering, hydro projects, and matching, navigability, the dams, the irrigation, the hydroelectricity. It's also about the environment, and many presentations about the preservation of an amazing ecosystem, a huge global hotspot of biodiversity, will need a lot of fine-tuning in the experiment. really believe that, and it's not just a matter of principle of, how you call that, prudency, or how you call that, you know, of caution principle, of being cautious on something new. I think there will be a fine-tuning, there will be a learning by process, learning by doing, on how to, for instance, preserve the islands, on how to preserve the ecosystems, as we have this dramatic change in water getting, first of all, diverted by China on the upper flow of the Brahmaputra, and then the whole regime of flowing of the Brahmaputra that will change whenever those dams, which are useful, which are needed, I don't deny that, but they will, when they will be put in place, that will be some sort of kind of system shocks to the ecosystem. So a lot of fine-tuning, a lot of step-by-step will be needed. And this will be a large-scale experiment. And what I think the Brahmaputra region should also look through what it has to teach the rest of the world, what it has to tell the rest of the world, because then the Congo River, maybe the Senegal River, which has been already equipped, will learn from the Brahmaputra in terms of ecosystem preservation. Maybe the Amazon River can learn in terms of ecosystem. We don't know, you know. So we're entering into a fascinating period for research, cross-pollination, and for, I would say, what I would call the environmental works, or the environmental civil works. You know, it's not just about civil works and concrete, it's not about civil works and hydroelectricity. It's not just about civil works and development, it's about civil works and the environment. And we're entering into a new era. On this, you have some startups all over the world, also in South Asia and in India, namely, of course, which are already engaged in this process. They've not waited for researchers. You have them in the north, but that's where the global south and the tropical cooperation, I believe, is more fruitful than just talking. And I'll qualify this: just talking to researchers and to startups from the north, because the conditions vary a lot across or within the tropics, but they vary even more when you look at the mighty river Loire, which is flowing just a few kilometers from where I stand today, which is one of, or maybe one of the, well, to me, the most beautiful river in France, you know, because it's remained a bit wild. But what we can learn from the river Loire, and what we can learn from the Brahmaputra, and what we can learn from the river Senegal or from the river Congo, are two classes of learnings and of experiments in terms of ecosystem, I would believe, you know, because the tropical ecosystems, even though they are very diverse within themselves, across themselves, they differ even much more, and this is an obvious thing to say, with northern rivers from the north. Now, this said, here comes my qualification. Of course, in terms of some technologies, in terms of some aquaculture, in terms of restoration of wetlands, in terms of ecological digestion of some biomass and bio waste, in terms of use of this bio waste into energies and etc. Of course, the chemistry, the physics are the same across the world. It's just the external temperature and pressure condition that differ, and the living ecosystem. So I think we have a fascinating, we enter a fascinating era, and I think the Brahmaputra will definitely be one of those basins, part and active into this era. My next comment would be on, I would say, integration, cross-borders integration. Fortunately, discussing China was not very central to our seminar. Our seminar had many more things to discuss, but fortunately, it also came in the topic, because we can see the usual aspect that we have when rivers cross borders and when there is a lack of coordination, which is risk at many levels. We've discussed the ecological risk, we've discussed the flowing risk, etc. There could be security risk, there could be tomorrow military risk, God forbid, of course. But again, there's a wide spectrum of experiences in terms of political management of waters across the world. Here, of course, Africa has a diversity of experiences, very well managed in Western Africa, quite at risk in Eastern Africa with the Nile River. But I would move back to Asia and to Central Asia. The rivers in Central Asia have been used in a political manner by Stalin in the 30s to to redefine the borders so that countries could not be viable without discussion and without discussion on the rivers, which more or less happened under Soviet Union, which no longer happened as those countries became independent after 1991, and which are happening again. And I'm saying that those conversations are happening again because I've been myself part of those discussions when delegations from Central Asia came to visit Dakar in Western Africa at the time when the World Water Forum was taking place. So that's why that's why I want to insist again that even in situations that look politically complex, difficult, or without hopes, sometimes a kind of decentering geographically, sharing expertise, maybe not in a bilateral manner when that doesn't work. Ideally, it's better. But when that doesn't work, when this looks locked, still there's a possibility of sharing things within the international community and not just the international community of researchers, but the international community of managers of rivers and of water organizations. Maybe my very last point, but you realize that I've become passionate about the Brahmaputra and that you've pinpointed my part of India, which I've not visited yet, and I want to catch up with that, So I could have many points, but I'll stop to a last one, and I would get back to the COP26. The COP26 was very important in the sense that, well, the main message of the main objective of the COP26 was to finalize those so-called nationally determined contributions, which are more about emissions of greenhouse gases. We are a bit far away from rivers, even though dams can also emit CO2 or methane or absorb, on the contrary. They can help on the downstream developing an agriculture and a soil use that can also absorb CO2. So they should be looked into this framework nonetheless. But this aspect of the COP26 was not directly related to rivers. However, a more marginal aspect of the COP26, but which I believe will be increasingly important as we progress into the subsequent COPs, will be to see how, beyond purely looking at emissions and moving more towards adaptation, we have an integration between environment, which is beyond the purview of the climate change COP, but environment, adaptation to mitigation through what we call co-benefits, and then trying to see how nature-based solutions are discussed. So far, the nature-based solution against climate change are rather discussed within a different forum, which is the International Convention for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN. But around the COP26, there was the beginning, I would say, of a merger across those different discussions. And here, rivers are fundamental. I would want to quote one dear friend of mine, a young man aged 75, Eric Orsena, who's a member of the French Academy. He's a great novelist, but he's also the chairman of the International Association for the Future of Great Rivers. One of his saying is that those great rivers can die, but they also exemplify, and this is rather the message of hope, they also exemplify the unity of l'unité du vivant in English would be the unity of whatever is alive, you know, the unity of life. Those rivers connect you to a fauna, to a flora. They connect you to the living environment. They connect you to communities that live there, that live around. They connect you to the air, to the atmosphere. And there are systems which, seriously speaking, scientifically, we don't know much about them. And therefore, the UDA initiative is absolutely important. It's all the more important to apply it in the so-called tropical areas, because most of knowledge on rivers has been developed in the north for the north. And we still have, and I regret to see every day that within my fellow researchers, there are silos. It's difficult to know those conditions. I'll really stop there because I don't want to take much time. But so far, for instance, the capacities of those equations for evaluating the impact of climate change on different systems at the meteorological level are less and less in silo, you know. Conversely, the equations to understand the absorbing capacity of different soil ecosystems are still very much in silo. But fortunately, the good message, the message of hope, is that the Global South has taken it up to identify their all absorbing capacities, and even Sahelian region in Africa, which are among the poorest parts of the planet, are now having their own, establishing their own equations for that. And it's a matter of sovereignty. Now, if we move to water, be it salted water, be it the ocean, or be it fresh water in the rivers, there is also an issue of scientific sovereignty that will translate into sovereignty on what I was calling the environment civil works, and which will translate into an economic and political sovereignty, as moving from COP26, and again, I'm back on COP26, will finally, might happen at COP27 or COP28, enact the famous Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, which allows trading across countries capacities of absorptions by the ecosystems. And I think that there, India has a great potential. We all know that India is a large emitter in terms of its classical emission outlook. If you look at the environment of India, India's capacities of absorption, and there will be a positive feedback. The more India will realize the value, the economic value, the tradable value of its absorption capacity, the more it will protect and develop its environment. So, in a nutshell, this is the course we see across the world, and I would really invite many of the speakers who are here today to try and find a way to share their expertise into the next COP27, which will be taking place in Egypt. Unfortunately, it will not take care in Cairo near the Nile River. It will take place near the Red Sea. But I think Egypt as a host country, and many of the countries who are member parties of the COP27 must learn about the Brahmaputra. And I thank you again, Commander Das, for this kind invitation and for reminding me one of my gaps in India. Thank you so much. Your mic is off, Arnab.
Sorry, thank you, Joel, for the very insightful talk that you gave, covering the whole aspect from the micro to the macro. And I must thank you for the beautiful background. I know you are at a very beautiful place in Paris right now. And most importantly, I think you've covered the entire range of issues which deserve attention. And we look forward to being together at Egypt for the COP27. Thank you so much. So I will now call upon Ananya, our research associate looking at Brahmaputra project, to kindly propose the vote of thanks. Ananya, all yours, please.
Thank you, sir. Good evening to one and all present here. And it's my great pleasure to have this opportunity to thank you all the attendees and respected speakers on behalf of Maritime Research Center. UDA is a very new domain, and events like this webinar, where such knowledgeable and such senior people come together and talk about river systems and UDA and Brahmaputra, give us motivation and provide us with so many new perspective to move forward with. So thank you again to everyone for your valuable time, all the guests and all the attendees, and wishing everyone a very good health and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananya. At the last, I would
Thank you.
particularly like to thank the panelists who have given their very valuable time to us and made some very insightful comments. Starting with Pandya sir, who has been very kind to us, and he's been a mentor to us in many ways and facilitating this webinar. Dr. Gupta sir, Chairman CWC, for I know he's a very busy man, but you have spent a lot of time with us. Thank you so much, sir, and a very, very insightful presentation that you made. Pritam Da, thank you very much. You indeed brought a very, very clear perspective on various issues related to the Gati Shakti and the related aspects. Ashutosh Gautamji, thank you very much. I know it's been a lot of pressure, a last minute request from our side, and you honored it. Thank you very much for doing that. Akshita ma'am, thank you very much. You made a very good point, and we look forward to working with you and taking things forward. And I think we had a very good series, and probably this is one of the last webinars, but we obviously don't say this is the last because there will be issues, and as and when we feel there is issues to be discussed, we would like to bring together the best of people, best of experts to kind of talk about it. Joel, thank you very much for joining us and making a very
Thank
good
you.
presentation.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you all. We'll
Thank you.
close now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you,
much
sir.
for
Goodbye.
having us.